Welcome to the DNA Talks podcast, where we take on the mission of unlocking the code of your genetics. This season is all about you, upgrading your health, not just on the surface, but down to the root cause. Join us as your clinicians at the DNA company investigate your DNA and beyond. The intention of this podcast is to enhance your lifestyle by changing what is in your control. This does not substitute the medical advice given by your personal doctor, therapist, and other healthcare professionals.
Hello and welcome to the DNA Talks podcast, where we take on the mission of unlocking the code of your genetics. This season is all about you, upgrading your health, not just on the surface, but down to the root cause. Join us as your clinicians of the DNA company investigate your DNA and beyond. The intention of this podcast is to enhance your lifestyle by changing what is within your control. This does not substitute the medical advice given by your personal doctor, therapist, and other healthcare professionals. Hi, my name is Dr. Laura Varden. I'm a licensed clinical practitioner with the DNA Company and Dean of the DNA University. As a PhD, I have expertise in cellular biology, molecular genetics, biochemistry, neuroscience, and functional nutrition. And today, my guest is not unfamiliar to the DNA Talks podcast, but a man who has generously shared his energy and knowledge to our listeners, whether it be through discussing the power of Third Rock's Sunblock against UVAs and UVBs, or preparing you and your family for the summer. In this episode, he is back for the third time to talk about boosting your health through the winter with some of his products, including D3 plus K2, High Z for zinc, and liver cleanse. So without further ado, I would absolutely love to welcome back none other than the founder of Third Rock Essentials, Dr. Guerry Grune. Hi, Guerry. So nice to see you again. How have you been?
Oh, great. Always good to see you. And I've been doing great, and hope you and all the folks that are listening are going to be doing great. It's hard to believe it's almost winter of 2024, but here we are, Thanksgiving coming up.
I know, we blinked and like a bunch of months just disappeared. It's like, I feel like we were just here talking about summer and summer health. So just amazing.
It goes fast. It goes fast. Time goes by, right? So, yes.
So here we are. And yes, winter is approaching and all of our holidays, Thanksgiving right around the corner. And then we've got Christmas. And of course, the beautiful dead of winter, especially for those of us in the Northeast who get lots of snow and cold, and we're all closed up indoors.
Yep, a lot less sunlight, unfortunately.
Yep. So the thing is that we all need to stay healthy. We're not getting much sun. And
Right.
I think the perfect opportunity to get some more vitamin D. And we actually have had a lot of our audience have questions about your D3K2, about your zinc, like what's in it, what makes it so special, and how can it help further protect them, well, and not just in the winter but all year. So
Sure.
I'd like to dive in a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I think since we're talking about winter months and less sunlight, outdoor sunlight, and the fact that you really should get at least 20 minutes of sunlight a day, direct sunlight a day, so that your body can make as much vitamin D as you need for the day. Of course, that's really difficult to do in the winter months, especially with winter storms and just the fact that it's getting dark by the time it's early afternoon and it's dark already. So we make something called D3K2, liquid D3K2. We call it sunshine in a bottle. I have some here. This is one of the products that we make, and that was developed really to make sure that your D3 levels stay at a level which is going to be optimal for your health. As you know better than me, the metabolic pathways, but it turns out that D3 with K2 is really the best way to supplement for D. I learned a lot about it when I was, like everybody else, fighting COVID. And turns out that vitamin D is a very, very potent antiviral compound, and especially has good effects when you've either had COVID or post COVID, and to protect your system from uh, viral infections. So, with the K2 as the carrier, the D3K2 that we make is chelated with citric acid. And we use citric acid because citric acid is really very useful for it's part of the Krebs cycle and helps in the ATP, which is basically energizing the cells. So, there's a theory out there that uh, you've got several trillion cells in your body, and that actually each cell has a function. And I sort of ascribe to that theory. I don't have any direct scientific proof of that. I've read several papers on it. I've listened to some podcasts about it. I've met some people at some of our conferences uh, regarding this issue. And the more I think about it and the more I know how systems work, being the engineering background that I have, it seems to make sense that probably is true, that every cell in your body has a function. You've got all your organ cells, your eye cells, your nose cells, your brain cells, your skin cells. It's amazing, how the body works in that regard. And I think what happens is some cells really are supposed to go through apoptosis. I guess it's cell death. But I think what happens is, especially with skin cells, which I knew a lot about because developing the sunscreen. I think with skin cells, they do die, at least at the surface. And of course, it's very, very healthful to exfoliate. I like to get into the ocean every day if I can. It's getting colder and harder to do, but it's something that I think actually really does sort of refresh your body because you're getting rid of some dead skin cells. And so, how does all that relate back to D3K2 and sunshine and health? I think the issue is, especially in the winter months, D3 or vitamin D is something that most people experience the levels drop. And of course, that's specifically because you're just not getting that 20 minutes of direct sunlight every day. And of course, in the wintertime, people like to stay inside. It gets cold. Even if you're in your car driving, you're probably not getting direct sunlight unless you're down in the southeast of the country or maybe California somewhere or Arizona. But most people this time of the year in North America are just their vitamin D levels drop, and you probably know more about this than I do in terms of how it changes your mood. Your mood elevates with vitamin D, and so all of those things really contribute to your overall wellness and especially to your immune health. So again, the D3 that we do, we chelate it with citric acid so that it'll be more bioavailable and bioactive than say something like a capsule form. My thought process when I made this product was, I'm not sure that I want to swallow capsules, which will wind up in my gut and then slowly solubilize and then I guess get into the rest of my bloodstream over time. But I felt like if you got it right orally and you started absorbing it, bioabsorbing it from the mouth all the way down, that would be a more beneficial way to get it into your system quickly and also to maintain the vitamin D levels. So anyway, so that's that's a little bit about the D3K2 product.
Well, actually, I want to dive a little bit deeper into your D3K2 because you were mentioning that you use a particular type of acid, citric acid. And a lot of people think, oh, citric acid, okay, citrus fruit and vitamin C and ascorbic acid. But the thing is, those two things are not the same. So Yeah, and but a lot of people, it's like they don't realize the nuances, the differences in this. And I heard you say about citric acid. Yes, it's very important because it is part of the citric acid cycle, which is also called the Krebs cycle in cellular metabolism, because it is a tricarboxylic acid, as compared to ascorbic acid. And I wanted to know if you could unpack that a little bit to differentiate the two for people.
Yeah, well, I love the chemistry involved, and you're absolutely right. Most people think, including myself, actually. I mean, I didn't know that much about citric acid. Everybody has heard of vitamin C, and vitamin C, of course, is molecular or chemical molecular structure is ascorbic acid, and citric acid is not ascorbic acid. So it turns out that vitamin C is, of course, very beneficial, especially during cold and flu season. Everybody's known that for a long time. Linus Pauling, who was a Nobel Prize winner, was interested in vitamin C. This is going back 40, 50 years ago, and understanding that high doses of vitamin C could be very beneficial for certain illnesses, including potential cancer illnesses, where high infusion levels of vitamin C, as IV wise, can also show an effect on not necessarily eliminating cancer, but certainly retarding it. But ascorbic acid, as vitamin C, usually comes from citrus and, I guess, plants. It doesn't have to be grapefruits, oranges, and or lemons or limes, but that's primarily ascorbic acid is either extracted, from that, or it's synthetically made in the laboratory. And of course, nowadays in the United States, unfortunately, there's only one manufacturer of ascorbic acid in the United States. So almost all vitamin C is coming from overseas, which is sort of a problem that we've got, throughout the country. And for a lot of products, for the supply chain, things are coming out of Asia,
Well,
which are very difficult to
you're
control.
talking about the synthetic form, though,
I
correct?
am. I am.
Oh,
And
okay.
of course,
Because
and of
I know
course,
that, when it comes to vitamin C, I am usually, first of all, recommending whole foods first,
yes,
things that are naturally found in fruits, vegetables, oranges, strawberries, bell peppers, and things like that. But
exactly.
if they're looking for more specific concentrated forms to get a whole food supplement, and there
Mhm.
are products out there with the whole food supplement, not necessarily having to straight go for that synthetic form. And which, by the way, and I had to say this because the nerd in me just couldn't help it, when you were talking about in chemistry the chemical formulas, when you're talking about the difference between citric acid and ascorbic acid, it is the difference of one one molecule, oxygen. Well, molecule, it's the whole molecule, that particular
Right.
element, because the citric acid actually has one more oxygen than ascorbic acid. Now, obviously, the arrangement is a little bit different, but
Yeah.
overall, they are very, very close in chemical structure. But with
Yeah.
ascorbic acid, here we're talking about a monosaccharide derivative,
Mhm.
and it is essential for humans. It is still very important. And actually, vitamin C is really good to have for health. For, if you're getting sick, I know when I travel or when I'm kind of feeling a little off or something coming on, I do increase my vitamin C intake. Um, but definitely, yeah, I want to move back into, your products, because you chelate many of your products with citric acid. And,
Yes.
that is something, first of all, just out of curiosity, um, how difficult is it to chelate, these compounds, these elements with citric acid, to put them in the formulation that you create?
Good question. So, and just adding to the ascorbic acid, citric acid, um, I guess distinguishing those two, I would just say that citric acid, believe it or not, is mostly derived from corn, at least in the United States. So it's actually processed from corn, and people think, oh well, I have a corn allergy, I shouldn't be doing citric acid. Well, by the time it's refined and it comes out of whatever the original um, origin raw material that's used to make citric acid, believe me, there's no possibility you're going to have a problem even if you have a corn allergy. But it's highly refined, as is ascorbic acid. And the thing that they both have in common is they're both carboxylic acids and they're very, very water soluble. So getting to your question about chelation, what you really want to be able to do, and this all started when we started chelating zinc oxide with L-arginine to make sunscreen. And then we chelated silver oxide with citric acid. And in both cases, what you want to chelate with, the chelator, if you want to call it that, which is what it is, the chelator has to be very water soluble. And so with vitamin C and which is ascorbic acid, and with citric acid, in fact, I think citric acid is probably the most water soluble commercially available carboxylic acid that there is. So your question was, how simple is it or how difficult is it? As long as your chelator is very water soluble, then whatever you drop into the water soluble solute, which is usually a highly concentrated version of citric acid, or a highly concentrated version of, in the case of the zinc, L-arginine, or the silver, the citric acid, as long as that citric acid solution in this case, or arginine solution in this case, is highly concentrated, meaning that you solubilize it in water at a high concentration, means you use a lot of it, then what happens when you add whatever to the chelator, whatever you add to chelate, the chelate agent that you're adding, that is usually a very simple reaction. It's a mild reaction, and what helps it is heat. So I have found that the higher the temperature is, normally what your chelation situation is going to happen is you're going to have a faster and more effective chelation. That turns out to not be true, very interestingly, with L-arginine. L-arginine, as you know, is an amino acid, and I guess it's an essential amino acid. And that reaction, which is very interesting, seems to be endothermic rather than exothermic. In other words, that reaction, for some reason, does better at colder temperatures than at higher temperatures. So it really does matter from the chemistry standpoint, what's your chelate, what is your chelator, and what are you trying to achieve? With the citric acid, with the D3K2 product, I find that the D3 is very, very water soluble. And so therefore, and so is citric acid. And so making that happen in chelate works out really easily and well. The K2, as you know, is a little bit different. It is a vitamin, but you have to be careful with K2 because with vitamin K can be a blood clotting agent. So you have to be careful. You don't want to use too much, and you want to make sure that your D3K2 is somehow bonded, at least from my perspective. And that way you're going to get a better carrying system. And the K2, well, or the vitamin K, it's not as water soluble. It's a sort of a fat, more fatty soluble sort of supplement. And so what happens is it doesn't really chelate with the citric acid until you do some pretty strong mixing. That's mechanical mixing to get it, into this completely water soluble form that we sell. So that's getting back to your original question. It's not that difficult to do if you do it in the right sequence, if you have the right setup, and you moderate the temperature at which the reaction is trying to evolve. And what we found with the D3K2 and with the zinc, because we also chelate zinc oxide, is high temperatures work really well. You want to see the chelator and the chelate solubilize completely. And what do I mean by that? Well, we use deionized water, so you can see it's very clear. And what you see is what you really want is you want a very clear end product. Like if you can see this on the zinc, it's completely clear. We put the D3K2 in a brown bottle only because it's light sensitive, but this is extremely clear too. They both look like they're water, and we even have that result with our chelated silver oxide. Again, you can see, maybe you can't see, but it's completely clear. They're all completely clear, and that tells me as a chemist that the reaction has gone to completion, and that you have a fully solubilized, water solubilized product.
Well, I mean, with the understanding that D3 or vitamin D, vitamin K are both fat soluble, it's really interesting, and fascinating that in chemistry that you can actually, chelate that with citric acid, creating this, you know, more water soluble, that it's not suspended in oil, a carrier oil that many other supplements are in, or liposomal form, or microencapsulated, or, I mean, look around, there's like a gazillion different D3, alone, or D3K2 combined products. Which brings me to the question, which is a little more on the practical side, is that when you had this realization of, okay, I need more vitamin D, and especially during the winter, what made you make your own product as compared to, choosing one from the plethora that's out there?
Right. Well, I think I mentioned briefly you know the epidemic. We all lived through that. Well, most of your listeners, I would imagine, lived through that. Otherwise, they wouldn't be listening. So, it's only a couple of years ago. It seems like a decade ago now. But I personally got COVID in December of 2020, December of 2021, and December of 2022, all in Florida, all at the same time, about the same time of the year. Really sort of weird, but I guess just getting exposed because of travel. And the first time I got it, everybody was really concerned, if you remember, about the respiratory system, right? And everybody's like, oh my God, you might have trouble breathing. And, I was traveling by myself, and I had, people asking me, are you breathing okay? And all those things. And I started, doing some of my own looking, through different literature and my own sort of, reading research type thing, and say, okay, well, what's really useful? And in Europe, actually, D3K2 was highly recommended by several German scientists, and I'd found them online, and they were explaining how the COVID symptoms were reduced significantly, and it was also um, helping people prevent it as a preventative. So I said, well, I better go ahead and start taking some vitamin D. And I noticed that I could go to the store, I could go to the vitamin shop, I could go to wherever your favorite supplements place is, and there's plenty of vitamin D out there, which will spike your vitamin D levels. But then I also had known from an earlier conference where I'd gone, where I met a dentist who said, hey, if you're taking vitamin D without K, it's just not going to be absorbed properly, and it's not going to really work well. The other thing that I learned, which is highly useful, I think, for your listeners and for myself, is if you take a D3K2 supplement, then it will actually help remove calcium from the blood and deposit it into the bone. And I think that was something that was a revelation for me also. Did not know about that. I don't really understand the mechanism as well as you probably do. But I do know that that is actually something going on. And of course, a lot of females have osteoporosis issues, or the onset of that. And for me personally, I've had high calcium scores. I mean, higher than zero anyway. And of course, that can lead to hardening of the arteries and/or heart disease. So for men, this is just as important as it is for women, but probably for a different reason, because I think more men are susceptible to higher calcium scores in their blood. And the D3K2 product, especially a soluble one like we make, is probably going to act more quickly. One other thing that really is interesting about all this, and I'm going on and on, so stop me if I'm if I'm going too quickly or not
Oh,
making
it's great
sense.
information.
So the other thing that was really interesting to me about the whole thing about solubilizing D3K2 is that it seems like that your body um, actually sort of regulates the vitamin D concentration. So I did have one client that contacted me regarding the fact that her vitamin D levels actually dropped by taking the D3K2 product that we make. And that was a little bit of a dilemma or enigma, or whatever you want to call it. I didn't really understand how that was possible. So I started doing some more searching on that and found out that really what happens is if you take certain vitamin D supplements with or without the K2, it'll get into your bloodstream and it'll spike. And of course, when you're monitored for vitamin D by any of the doctors, and this has become a big deal now in the last, I'd say in the last decade in the United States, almost every doctor this time of year, all the way through the spring, is asking, have you had your vitamin D levels checked? And of course, the way to check it primarily is you check it by blood. Well, just because your vitamin D levels in your blood are high, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting it absorbed where it needs to be or that it's working the way it's supposed to work to regulate your body. And to me, that was a revelation as well. And it turns out that the reason for this woman's issue, as far as I could tell, is that her vitamin D levels were so high that they were abnormally high because she had been taking, I guess, capsule supplements and quite a bit of it. I don't know how many milligrams or IUs, but when she started taking our supplement, it auto regulated and her numbers dropped, but they dropped to around, I think, 60 deciliters, something like that per gram or
Well,
something.
I know that a lot of the measurements are in nanograms per milliliter,
Hmm.
or well, that's generally what you'll see, at least in the US. For
Yes,
Canada,
yeah.
it works into millimoles, and it's a different number. But no, I mean, I think that's fascinating. And I'm sorry, I didn't want to step on your toes there.
No, 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 that's
So,
fine.
so what?
I think the number that she was at was over 100, and I think like the numbers that you're supposed to see in the blood are somewhere between 30 and 60.
Well,
But
actually, the range is 30 to 100, which
okay.
honestly, I find that 30 is way too low. I
Uh-huh.
personally don't like
Uh-huh.
to see my clients any less than 50, but
Okay.
more optimally, like 70 to 90, more so in that range seems to be a real nice optimal sweet spot.
Well,
But,
she was concerned because she had dropped from over 100 to around 60 or so. But I think at 60, and again, you know more about this than I do, and of course, it's very individualized, right? Some people are good at 60. I'm sure some people are probably good at 30, and I think some other people might be good at 100. I think what's interesting is that for some reason, even though she was taking the D3K2 supplement, her numbers actually dropped. And I would not have expected that.
now, did you find that through your research, and I mean, at least theoretically, this is where my mind would go, is that um, well, first of all, the measurements that are done on a blood test are the 25-OH or hydroxy vitamin D, which is actually the storage form. And then, of course, which is cholecalciferol, uh, that actually gets converted into the active form, calcitriol, in the kidneys, which has a very shorter half life of like 6 to 8 hours, but that's what's actually getting transported, being put into the cells. But she may not have been getting the vitamin D into the cells where they need to do their jobs. And that's why there was such a higher level of serum vitamin D. So it seems like whatever was going on and your product, helping facilitate that, that it was actually helping the vitamin D3 actually get into the cells. So therefore, it lowered the serum level. But I'll bet you if she had done a micronutrient test or something that actually looked at the micronutrients or the cellular level of the D3, that probably would have increased, which really that's where the end product is a matter of that um, ability for the D3 or for the vitamin D to actually bind to the receptor, which is the VDR receptor gene. That's what it's related to, vitamin D receptor. How well is it binding to those receptors on the cell to be able to get in and do the job that it needs to do? So, is that what you were finding? I mean, I know that was a more full explanation.
No, that's a
Um,
really great explanation. So what I'm thinking out loud to you is, wow, uh, I need to even do some more deep dive and see if anybody's come up with the understanding about where the vitamin D from the blood serum gets to the cell and then gets to whatever uh, on the gene. I mean, that's where you come in with the knowledge of the metabolic pathways and how the D gets from the blood serum into where it's supposed to be, and also helps transport calcium into the bone. Because to me, that's a fascinating bunch of information that I honestly don't know enough about.
Yeah.
I
Well,
just
we could
know
probably do an entire podcast just diving into that. But there are other products of yours that I do want to dive into. But
okay,
really quickly, speaking of getting the calcium from the blood that D3 liberates, okay, from tissues, organs, whatever, to be able to get it into the bloodstream. We want to get it back into the bones, into the teeth where it needs to be. And that really is the job of vitamin K, specifically K2. And
right.
so these metaquinones, there's actually two different types. We've got the MK4 and
Mhm.
MK7. MK4 basically having that shorter half life. MK7 does have a longer half life, but there are other benefits which I'm not going to dive into right now. But which form do you use? Do you add
Yep,
in,
great
or
question.
both?
Yeah, we use the we use the MK7. We use the MK7, and we just found that for us anyway, for the supplement we're making, and in doing the search before we made the product, we felt like the MK7 was a better transport mechanism, which is exactly what you were talking about, and that's why. And then we were asked, well, what's the source? Is it a plant source or is it an animal source? It's a plant source. So because people want to know, so that's what we went with. And I got to tell you, I was amazed because we make all of our own products, right? We don't third party our products, and I was amazed by the cost for the MK7 powder that we had to purchase. And the good news again is we try to make sure we don't source our products from outside the U.S. if at all possible. In the case of L-arginine, for example, we don't have a choice. There's no manufacturers of L-arginine in the United States, so we get it from Japan, not from China, for a lot of reasons, things that you can imagine. So we do source stuff from the U.S., but I got to say, vitamin K in the powdered form for MK7 coming from plant, a small packet of that was over $1,000.
Wow. Yeah, and
Yeah.
MK7 is more bioavailable. And like I
Mhm.
said, it has a longer half-life compared to MK4. And I know that a lot of products that have that do use the MK7 if they don't blend the two together. So yeah,
Yeah, it turns out that vitamin D is the vitamin D3 or D2 or whatever. That's relatively inexpensive, but it's the K that's really, really rare to be able to get, and and the manufacturer needs to be careful that they're actually making that they're actually extracting and making vitamin K, and that it's the right vitamin K.
so a question that, I've had in my mind, well, and have contemplated, as well as uh, clients of mine, audience members, well, they know that vitamin D and vitamin K, like I'd mentioned before, are fat soluble vitamins. But yet It's not suspended in the fat. It's not, a liposomal form or, you know, and obviously there's reasons why, you know, D3 and K2 are generally, in this lipid, um, protection, uh, because it helps with bioavailability. Now, the thing is, yours doesn't have that. So, the benefits, though, the fact that the formulation, that although it is a water based liquid formulation that has the chelated forms, and with the dropper, you put it right in the mouth. So, with that, I would say you get some very rapid absorption into the bloodstream by. Right. And I think that, that's one of the things that, at least from what we've chatted about before, being a wonderful advantage. Um, Not to mention the fact that the dropper really allows for that customizable dosage. I really like that because, a lot of yeah, a lot of the pills, I mean, you get these and they're like 5,000 IU vitamin D, or something like that. And it's like, or they're just 1,000 and then you've got to take multiple pills and it can be such a pain in the butt to be
And
able to take.
I agree. I personally don't like encapsulated supplements because what I normally do is I'll open the capsule up and stir it into water just to make it more bioavailable. That's just me personally, but what a pain in the neck. And like you said, you're buying the capsules at some, at some concentration level, whatever it is. And the other thing you find with the solid capsule forms is there's a lot of additives that really, in many cases, there are a lot of additives you just don't need that keep it in a dry powdered form so that the capsules have a long shelf life. And the capsules themselves are usually methylcellulose type products, methoxycellulose or a cellulosic product that's very, very water soluble. But I mean, it's sort of inert stuff. I mean, I don't think it's harmful, but if you're taking 20 or 30 supplement capsules a day, that's a lot of cellulosic stuff you're putting into your gut. And I'm thinking, why?
Well, and also you consider individuals, and I'm thinking, because I have pediatric clients as well, or people who just have difficulty swallowing capsules. That's a problem where this being that liquid right in the mouth, you have very fast quick absorption into the bloodstream, not to mention the fact that and correct me if I'm wrong, chelation enhances the stability of the vitamins.
No, I think
So
you're absolutely right. 100%. I think that's 100% correct. Our stability, for what we can tell, and we've been making this product over 3 years now. We've never had a stability issue with either the zinc or the D3K2 or the silver. That once it's chelated, you're absolutely right. It does increase the shelf life, but it does it in a much different way than in encapsulated form will. The FDA likes to have shelf life stamped on things, but you know, we we have products that we've made that are stable, that are shelf stable for years and years. And I think it also, like you're bringing that up, is very interesting because that means the efficacy is the same every time.
yeah, which is wonderful. So, just getting and understanding that a disadvantage of that fat dependency, due to these fat soluble vitamins, we're talking more absorption, you know, because there's the absorption initially into the body, into the bloodstream, but then into the cells, because it does have to get, for the bilipid layer, for the receptors, and the fact that yes, these are fat soluble vitamins. So, in order for to optimize its bioavailability, I would say to make sure, take your product, I'm talking to all of our audience members, take the product with a meal containing fat. Boom, there you go. That is going to help with further that the efficacy. and bioavailability of these vitamins. And obviously, it has been working. You have anecdotal evidence from clients, and so you're getting a lot of the benefits all the way around. And I mean, it really is cost effective as well. I mean, you know, you don't make your products super expensive or anything else. I mean, you know, they're very, very reasonable.
No, I mean, like, well, D3K2, I mean, one small 1 ounce bottle like this is probably plenty for at least 1 month supply, possibly even a little more. We recommend an eyedropper full of this a day, and maybe in the winter too, one in the morning, one in the evening. You could take it with the meal, as you mentioned, which is always the best way to get it. Go ahead.
Speaking of which, let's
Yes.
tell people what's the dosage, the concentration on that.
4,000 IU, and that's based on on 5 drops. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there you go. And I mean, when you consider for the amount, I think if they did that, that's actually like 2 months worth, if
Oh
my
yeah, if they're
mental
just doing
math is
five,
correct.
they're doing 5 drops. That's a half of a vial full, a half of an eyedropper full. So if you pull this out, start taking it, that's only a half of an eyedropper. So yeah, then it would last about 2 months if you just did that. I recommend in the wintertime. Well, I recommend doesn't matter anytime. I recommend, especially in the wintertime when you're getting less sunlight. I recommend at least 1 to 2 eyedroppers full a day, right? And you're also right about the so we use glycerin for a lot of our products. Glycerin, is Mother Nature's sort of halfway between oil and water. And I think that's a good transport mechanism. That's actually in our silver compound, our chelated silver
Yes,
product.
let's dive into the silver. I mean,
Okay.
I want to dive into the zinc.
Oh, the
Um,
zinc. Well, the zinc first.
yes,
Okay, so this is our
yes, let's dive
we
into the
call
zinc.
high Z. Okay, so the zinc.
Okay.
I think I have a lot of experience with because we only use zinc for making our sunscreen, right? So our sunscreen is zinc only. Not We don't use titanium dioxide. We use zinc oxide only. So we have a lot of zinc oxide, and we get a very highly refined zinc oxide product, which it goes back to a long story. But long story short, um, well, one thing you mentioned was interesting. So one of my daughters cannot swallow capsules, even to this day. So it's very interesting how some people just don't want to be able to swallow capsules. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right about liquid form. But getting to the zinc, the high Z, we call it high Z. And the reason
Mhm.
we call it high Z is it's actually a very high concentration. It's 1,142 milligrams in one eyedropper full of this. So it turns out with this product, you have to be very careful. So zinc, obviously a great supplement all year round. You know about how many different metabolic pathways utilize zinc hopefully efficiently. It's really, really important for men's prostate health. I've
Yeah.
known that for a long time. Personally, had to deal with those issues, and I would tell you and your listeners that zinc is, especially in the wintertime, again, something that there are zinc capsules that are sold along with vitamin C
Mhm.
to help again with the transport to get the benefits of the antioxidant capabilities of ascorbic acid or vitamin C into the cells. So this high Z complex is also chelated with citric acid for the same reason, just to help bioactivity, bioavailability, and intracellular activity. And of course, we don't make a liquid vitamin C supplement. Maybe we should, an ascorbic acid supplement, but but this together with vitamin C really potent, especially if you get any type of cold or flu, or you're fighting some kind of virus. I think the zinc, along with vitamin C, is sort of essential to really get the vitamin C to be helpful and beneficial. And that's what a lot of people say. Oh, I took the, I don't know, what do they call that? The vitamin C stuff that you, like the tablets you put in water, high C or something like that.
Mhm.
Anyway, um, a lot of people take those, and if they feel the onset of a cold. But I think one of the things people forget about is also bringing some zinc in. But with zinc, you have to be very careful. So you
Yeah.
don't want to overdose on zinc. I mean, with vitamin D, if you overdose, not going to harm you. Vitamin C, if you overdose, not going to harm you. But zinc, if you overdose, it will harm you. You'll start getting stomach aches. You'll have digestive issues.
Also, zinc is you want to take with food because that can make your stomach very upset, like you're saying, some digestive issues if too much. But also, if you take it on an empty stomach, don't do that. You have to take it with food. I do want to say before you talk about that gentleman. So, for our audience, zinc, you had mentioned already some of the benefits. I mean, zinc is essential for immune function. It definitely aids in the body's defense system, especially against pathogens. I mean, this is where, the viruses and everything else works. But it also helps in wound healing, as well as like DNA synthesis, protein production. I mean, there's so many different things. And then working at that more, subcellular level, but then working up to like the larger levels, that it can actually help to maintain clear skin, regulate blood sugar levels. I mean, that's one of the things that we look at in the genes, the SLC30A8 gene. It's zinc transport in the pancreas to help with insulin production, to help with that blood sugar regulation. So I mean, when you are regulating your blood sugar, you are allowing and strengthening, the body in several different ways. But for wintertime, we're really looking more at that immune function, wound healing, different things like that.
We had one guy who was working with us, and he wound up taking getting the high Z, and he started taking 1 to 2 eyedropper fulls of this a day, and then he contacted me and said, I've got some stomach problems. I said, well, you need to read the label. It doesn't say you're not supposed to be taking a full eyedropper full of this a day. Even half 5 to 7 drops of this a day, this could last you all winter long. Okay, there's not you don't need that much zinc, but you do need it.
Right. And that was another thing that I wanted to mention is for zinc, zinc and copper like compete with one another. And if you're taking a lot of zinc and you are not getting any copper, because zinc can actually deplete your copper stores, you need to have copper for energy for so many different things, but you also don't want too high of copper levels because that can actually get into neurological issues and other things. It's all about the balance. But if you are taking, zinc, especially in a little bit higher doses, like during cold and flu season, some people are taking 40 to 50 milligrams a day. You really need to be adding in a milligram or two of copper to help keep that balance. And that can actually be.
Makes perfect sense. Perfect sense, and I actually personally experienced that. In fact, that's probably how I got involved in all this health and wellness to begin with, because I was uh, I was taking runs every day, and I usually do things pretty drastically. I guess I overdo things, and I was taking runs every day, and I was drinking up to a half a gallon of apple juice. Turns out apples and apple juice are very high concentration of copper. Probably the highest concentration in any food is usually in apples of copper. So I literally, my body was becoming an ion exchange column. And what I was doing is I was depleting the zinc. And what happened was I developed prostatitis and started having to take antibiotics, and it led to a whole bunch of other issues that I had to resolve. As soon as I started taking zinc and stopped drinking apple juice, at least a half a gallon of it every day, my issues with my prostate became healthy again. And so, yeah, what you're saying makes perfect sense, and I have firsthand experience actually.
Yeah. And isn't that the best way that we learn? By going through it ourselves? Hard lessons, yes, but still lessons as
I
long
don't
as you
know if
learn.
it's the best way. It's certainly one way.
Well, I'll tell you that again, with your chelated zinc citrate formulation, dropper in the mouth, you can again uh, be very specific in dosaging. You're not stuck with a capsule or a tablet, for that specific amount. Quick absorption. So, again, just a fantastic product. I do want to take a few minutes, though, to jump into your liver cleanse because this, I love this product. Actually, I use all of your products. Um,
This one, the label's so beat up because it's been lying around so long. Well, we know this is shelf stable too. There's still some in it. I found this in one of my vitamin drawers, or supplement drawers. But anyway, yeah, this is the liver cleanse. We also call it hangover block.
well, that's true. We do have holiday parties and everything's coming up that it can always be, used for that. But tell me why, I mean, outside of drinking too much, why would liver cleanse be good for winter health?
Ah, well, you probably know more about that than I do. Here's my I guess 1 or 2 minute rendition of that. I would say that, with your liver, if your liver's healthy, you're going to be healthy. Your liver, I love to say your skin's your largest organ. It is, but your liver is your largest internal organ. And everything in your body is filtered through the liver. So, if you're bringing in toxins into your body, which, let's face it, during the winter, if you're traveling, especially, you're in the airports, going to see family for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever holidays, you're going to be exposed to a lot of bacteria. You're going to and viruses and all kinds of stuff, right? That you wouldn't be exposed to if you stayed in your own home, most likely. And of course, you definitely wouldn't be exposed to it if you're outdoors. But again, winter months, people tend to be inside more. So again, the liver is your detoxing organ, I guess, is the best way to put it. As an engineer, a systems person, everything is a black box. Your body's a black box. Garbage in is garbage out. And what you want to do is minimize the garbage in, but you can't do that all the time, especially during the holidays. You're going to be eating and drinking stuff that you normally wouldn't, most likely. And your liver is going to do the best job it can to keep up with whatever you're bringing in. And so what my goal was with liver cleanse is to take magnesium citrate. So magnesium citrate is really cleans out the liver and the colon very well. In fact, I could never understand, once I understood more about magnesium citrate, why people go and have a colonoscopy and they give them propylene glycol, which will absolutely make you go to the bathroom and clean you out and get rid of anything that's in your upper middle, lower, and intestinal tract. But magnesium citrate works way better, and it's way safer, and it's not a toxin, but it'll still work the same way. It'll be effective. It'll clean out your intestinal tract. And of course, it'll clean out your liver. So my thought process for liver cleanse is do two things: clean the liver out and then support the liver. Now, there's a lot of natural herbs that grow on the planet. Artichoke is actually the best. And if I had to reformulate, I'd use artichoke extract. We use dandelion, alfalfa, ginseng, and catnip. All four of those herbs we get from a place called Hawaiian Farms. That is the most amazing place. They extract things into both alcohol and glycerin. What we do is we take the glycerin extract because they all mix together well. And of course, I don't really believe, there's nothing wrong with alcohol extracts. They get into the blood faster. But of course, glycerin goes back to when you were talking about, lipids and sort of the metabolic pathways for things that are, what's the right word again? You used it. It's when you use like phosphatidylcholine, that kind of thing.
Oh,
It's
yeah, that because it basically you need to have it pass through that bilipid layer of the cellular membrane, which is made up of phospholipids. Yes.
Yes, the phospholipids, that's the word. Yeah, so which is phosphatidylcholine, for example. So we don't use that, but we do use glycerin. And glycerin doesn't have the same molecular structure as the phosphatidylcholine or the phospholipids, but it's down that pathway. Because glycerin is soluble in oil and it's also soluble in water. So it's sort of a great sort of in between. Anyway, those are the four herbs that we use to support the liver, as well as the magnesium citrate, which cleanses the liver. So my goal with this product was do both. Why just do a liver cleanse? Why can't you also support the liver simultaneously? Now, again, if your liver is really toxic, if you've got, some kind of fatty liver issues, which unfortunately in the United States we have a lot of those, if you tend to drink a lot, or you tend to, not watch your diet too well and don't exercise a lot, or whatever, and your liver is just, let's say, less than optimal functioning, then you might just want to do to start out with, you might want to do a full liver cleanse. And that means, to me anyway, you could use magnesium citrate, or find some other way of detoxing your liver. There's other products out there, but this one does both. This one does both, supporting the liver after, while you're cleansing the liver. Okay, so the anecdote is, I do patent work, uh, international patent attorneys and folks that I've dealt with for years, and one of them is from South Korea, and you'll probably see this on TikTok or a YouTube or something, where um, we were together at the end of last month in late October, and he has to do a lot of business development for his patent law firm in South Korea. So he said, as he says, he unfortunately has to drink a lot. And when he says a lot, let's just put it this way: it's more than what he says he drinks in one day is about what I would consume in alcohol in probably about a year. So he does drink a lot, and he asked me, "Well, how much of this should I take?" He said, "You got," because I call it hangover block. He says, "Can I take the whole thing at night?" I said, "Absolutely. You take the whole thing." So he says, "Well, let's meet downstairs in the lobby at 8 o'clock the next morning." And he stays up and works till 3 in the morning. Then he sleeps for 3 or 4 hours. I said, "Take it before you go to bed." He comes downstairs at the end of uh, at the next morning at 8 o'clock, and says, as holding the bottle, he says, "It works." And so I interviewed him. He said he was clear headed, that he can work much better. And of course, I have no idea what kind of situation his liver's in, but this product definitely is helpful, especially during the holidays. And again, this is a winter health issue. During the winter, you're inside more, you're going to tend to eat more, you're going to tend to drink more, possibly more alcohol. And then, what are you going to do to keep yourself healthy? So that's why we sort of incorporated it into discussing winter health today. And that's sort of our winter health triumvirate, the liver cleanse, the zinc, the chelated zinc oxide, and the D3K2.
I mean, they really are a wonderful trifecta, you know, to help support winter health. But I do want to mention a couple things about the liver cleanse because I've used it several times and I really like it. When I was going through each of the individual ingredients, which you've already listed off, but I want to briefly go over the benefits of some of these for our audience so they realize, the forethought that you have put into this, you know, for the support of the liver of what you're doing. So, one of the things you had mentioned, alfalfa leaf extract, okay? Rich in vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, supports the detoxification pathways, catnip. Okay, this is known for its calming properties. It supports good digestion, reduces stress on the liver. Fantastic. Um, the red ginseng root extract as an adaptogen, it enhances energy, supports immunity, obviously aids in liver function. Dandelion root, I love this. I love drinking dandelion tea. Traditionally used to support liver health and promote bile production, aiding in the detoxification, digestion. And then you had mentioned about the magnesium citrate. Of course, that supports enzyme function, aids in that removal of toxins. But then there was a couple things that you didn't mention. Um, First of all, you use monk fruit as a natural sweetener. That in itself has antioxidant properties. Not to mention it makes it taste, a little sweeter and a little better. Uh, but the one of the main things that you didn't mention was the chelated silver oxide that's in it. And, I mean, right there, providing antimicrobial properties, helping support the microbiome. I think that is such a beautiful golden thread or silver thread in this case throughout many of your products that are just the highlights of the what that particular thing does, the silver in and of itself.
Well, the synergy is, yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Laura. So the synergy is important. And of course, again, why is the silver in there? And the silver is in there primarily to retard or eliminate any bacterial growth in the product itself. So um, it turns out that when we initially formulated this, the folks that are shipping us our raws from Hawaii, from the organic farm, they do not filter the bulk. And what's very interesting is when they didn't filter the bulk, the chelated silver oxide, which we probably could talk about a lot, another whole episode, but the chelated silver oxide is antibacterial and antimicrobial, as you mentioned, and we sell that both as a concentrate in the silver excelsior, and we sell it in a ready-to-drink form, both in a spray bottle and in a large 16-ounce bottle, right? And people like ready-to-drink, but this is the best deal because one eyedropper full of this in 8 ounces makes the same as the big blue bottle, 150 parts per million. But the reason for the silver oxide in the liver cleanse is primarily to retard any bacterial growth, fungus, mildew, mold. And as an aside, what happened was the first products that we made, we were buying not in bulk. We were buying it in small quantities and seeing if we could sell it, seeing if it worked, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, from a cost standpoint, we had to start buying in bulk. Turns out they don't filter the bulk. So there's a bunch of mung, which is organic matter, okay, that was at the bottom of these bags, 2-gallon bags they shipped us. And we started having some type of white fungus grow in the product, and we were very concerned. And so we were like, wow, we can't ship that out. Turns out, which is really, really interesting, is that the white fungus was a Pseudomonas fungus. We had it analyzed, of course. And we found out that actually is essential in the soil, especially for organic herb farms, to help the herbs grow better. And it is not a toxic fungus to humans. Of course, nobody's going to buy a product that has white fungus growing in it, even though, and it was sort of a cloudy white, billowy fungus, but nobody's going to buy that product. So what we have to do now is we have to do our own filtration in-house after we get the 2-gallon bag. And that's eliminated the problem essentially, because we were really concerned that, hey, why is the silver oxide not wiping that fungus out? So it's really, really interesting because it's the only fungus or mold or mildew or infectious bacteria that the chelated silver oxide, to our knowledge, hasn't wiped out. And we've done a lot of testing. We've done it on E. coli, positive and negative strains of bacteria, MRSA, which is staph. It wipes all those things out. And we actually made that silver oxide product initially to infuse into plastics, like things like mouthpieces and mouth guards, so that fungus and bacteria wouldn't be able to linger on the surface of those plastic materials. So anyway, it's just another sort of anecdote about, our little path to getting to where we are today.
Is absolutely amazing. Like I said, I absolutely love your products, recommend them uh, to all of my clients. And this is also why we have you here, why we have this partnership, because we believe in you, we believe in your products, and we know that they work. And I thank you very much for your brilliance for creating these products, for your time, for being here today and sharing that knowledge with us, with all of our listeners. So, really quick, where can people find you? And actually, I know from a little bird who told me you've got a Black Friday sale going on. So, could you tell our listeners about that?
That's right. That's right. So the timing's great because I think we're going to release this just before Thanksgiving. So on our website, you can go there. We go to thirdrockessentials.com. It's the number 3RD. You can see it behind me. Third Rock, the number 3RD, thirdrockessentials.com. And we do have a Black Friday sale, 33% off of everything we discussed. Actually, everything site-wide now, but especially your winter health products are there for you. And there is a coupon code, which is So Thankful. It's SOTHANKFUL, just one L. So Thankful. And we're thankful to you. We're thankful to all the folks at DNA. we're thankful for our customers, our long-term customers. We have some people who've been with us now for over 10 years, and we're very thankful for getting to the point where we are with our little tiny company and with our relationship with DNA. And we're looking forward to a really great holiday season. And 2025 is right around the corner. We hope everybody stays healthy and happy through the holidays because it's a stressful time. And of course, we haven't even talked about, helping all these things, helping to de-stress your stress levels, right? But if you stay healthy, your stress levels are going to be a lot better than if you're not. So we want to keep everybody healthy, right?
Well, we are so thankful for you. And we also are very thankful for all of you tuning in to today's episode of the DNA Talks podcast. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, especially if there's a certain topic that you'd like us to discuss. You can also listen to this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you wish to learn more, add us to your list of liked podcasts so you'll be up to date when the next one will be. So, speaking of up to date, please, you can find us on Instagram uh, at DNA Talks Podcast, as well as my own at Dr. Varden Official. So, thank you once again for you, Dr. Guerry, for all of our audience. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Dr. Laura. Take care. Appreciate it.
Thanks.